Hi, and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum. I'm the executive, I was going to say producer. I am the executive director of New Shelves Books, and with me today we have back Ericka McIntyre, editor extraordinaire. Ericka has been working as an editor for years, more than 20 years, I believe, is with Writer's Digest. She's now working freelance as well. So we are so excited to have Ericka with us so that she can share all of her knowledge and we can ask all of our questions about editing and working with freelancers. So without further ado, hi, Ericka.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be back on Free Advice Fridays. And I finally got the Zoom background right. It's finally my bookshelf and not just a blank wall. So we're improving. We're improving our online presence here a year into stay at home. So yeah, I love what New Shelves does for authors. And I've worked with many New Shelves authors. And I've been working in editing and publishing, media and publishing, I should say, since around 1998. And I've been editing books since the year 2000. And I was the editor-in-chief at good old Writer's Digest for more than a year. And I stepped back from that. Actually, it was a year ago this week. Oh. It's an anniversary. This is kind of my anniversary celebration of 1 year back in business for myself as a full-time freelance writer and editor. I realized when I was at WD, I mean, I loved it there. It was great. It was fantastic. I met all kinds of wonderful people. Our own Amy Collins, that's how I met her, was through WD. Our own Bob Eckstein, who I see here. It was fabulous, wonderful, learned a ton, met great people, but missed working on books, missed it dearly, and realized that I was never going to be quite fully satisfied in my career if I wasn't able to edit books. So I thought, well, I've been a freelancer before. I was in business for myself for 7 years full-time before I went to WD. Okay. I can do that again. So the end of last February, beginning of last March, I walked out of WD, moved from editor-in-chief to editor-at-large, and restarted my editorial business. And the rest, as they say, is history. I've gotten to spend the past year editing fantastic books for both traditionally published and self-published authors, and it's been a blast, quite frankly. I love it.
And I love it too because I get to work with you all the time now. So yeah. Well, we just love having you here, and thank you for taking your time. For those who have not seen it, Ericka also wrote a guest blog for New Shelves. So if you go to newshelves.com/blog, you will see that, and that was all about when and how to work with freelancers, which I really appreciated because you tackled some things that people don't usually tackle. Like, you need to know your budget first. Sure, you can price things out, but you have to have a budget. It's kind of like going into a kitchen renovation and just saying, how much is it going to cost? And you get the 55 grand back and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I want like the 10 grand version, please. And if you don't know your budget to start, then you're wasting everyone's time.
Yeah. And that's, it's important to remember that freelance does not mean free. If you work a regular job, you expect your employer to pay you for every hour that you work. If you hire a contractor, good example, a plumber to work on your house, he charges you for every minute that he works for you. Yeah. And it's the same way with freelance editors. You can expect an initial brief consultation for free, sure. Mm-hmm. But if you want more than that, you're going to need to be prepared to pay for it. And, it's not $10 an hour. Yeah. I have a lot of people who have the misconception that freelance means hobbyist in some way. I think that, that this is like a side gig or, just something I do for extra pin money. Right. And, the economy has shifted. There are a lot more gig workers. There are a lot more full-time freelance folks, especially in our creative field. And this is how we make all of our money, not just some of it. And we also have to cover all of our own overhead. We have to take care of healthcare and self-employment tax and, insurance and all these different things. So it's like, there's a lot that goes into the freelance rate. You know, and we're not volunteers. So, you know, you have to, but if you don't know, say, what a development edit should cost, and you come to someone like me and you say, hey, I need a development edit for my book, and, you know, you were thinking it was going to cost this little dab, and it actually ends up costing that much, you're going to get some nasty sticker shock. So, you know, that's why I wanted to do that blog, to give people resources so that before they even contact a freelancer, they know if they even need one yet.
Right.
And they can kind of, you know, it's like, because there's a certain point where you don't even need one yet. You need to do some more writing first. And then there's also, you know, the question of how much should I expect to budget for this? And if you know those things going in, you'll be way more effective. That first conversation with a freelancer is going to go way more smoothly. You're going to be off on the right foot. You know?
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said too about knowing when you're ready. I was just talking to an author yesterday who goes, well, I just want to start working with them now, and they can just look at it now and then wait 2 months and look at it. And said, no, because a freelancer doesn't get paid. A designer doesn't get paid until the job is complete. So you want to respect their time by not starting working with them too early. You don't want to draw out the project and therefore draw out their work and also their paycheck like that. So I think that, I mean, the golden rule still applies. Treat people how you want to be treated. And I think that still definitely applies for freelancers, especially because when you work with a company, the company kind of protects the people that work there. But when you work with a freelancer, you have to remember that this person is, if you do not pay them, they may not have their rent. I mean,
yes, we like to eat. Yes. Some of us too. But yeah. Yeah, you know, my creditors won't accept payment 90 days late. So, you know, you should always pay your freelancers in a timely fashion, because, you know, we have bills to pay too. You know, it's a business. I'm a sole proprietor, but I am still a business. I'm still a business. And so I have business practices, and I have my own business budget, and I have my own expenses to meet. And, you know, I run it like a business. It's a relationship too, but chiefly I have to run it like a business, because it is. Otherwise I'll lose my shirt. So, and I like my shirt. I'd like to keep it. So
to keep it, especially on Zoom. Yeah. All right. We've got some questions.
I am also not a cat. I just want to say that in advance. I am not a cat.
All the important things. Oh my goodness. All right. Let me see. So I'm a retired English creative writing professor interested in getting into freelance editing. Do you have any suggestions for people who are trying to break into proofreading, editing, that kind of thing?
Yes. Join ACES. It's the American Copy Editors Society. And join a professional outfit like ACES or the EFA. If you're trying to break in, that's the best way to start. They're professional organizations of editors, proofreaders, copy editors, etc. And you can learn much from these folks, from seasoned editors who've been members of those organizations for many years. It can also connect you to potential clients. It will get you in the mindset of forming a resume, a way to present yourself, a way to present your services. They also offer lots of instruction. Some of it's free, some of it costs, but it's all worthwhile if you want to break into this business. It sounds like you already have more than one degree, and that's great. And if you have, any experience editing already, you want to pump that up when you put yourself out there. And I would join either one or both of those organizations to start. You might start with ACES, actually. And that's going to connect you to colleagues, mentors, potential clients. It's going to make you look more legitimate when you try to offer your services as well. Yeah. Because any old buddy can go out online and say that they do X, Y, and Z thing, but you really want to back that up with some credentials. And so that would be a good way to start. And if you want to just start getting your feet wet with projects, and if you're not so concerned with, making max dollars at first, you can also sign up on Upwork and offer yourself there as a proofreader, copy editor, writer, however, and try to get a few clients under your belt that way too. you know, and once you realize, you know, okay, I'm going to do this and it's going to be good, you know, then you can put a website up, and then you can, you know, spend a lot more money and time. And the other thing that I like too is it's on that shelf over there. There are 2 guides to copy editing. It's the Copy Editor's Handbook and the Copy Editor's Workbook. And if you want to sharpen your copy editing skills, I love those 2 books as well. I recommend them both highly. And I wish I pulled them over here. They're across the room. But
Is the Copy Editor's Handbook a guide for book publishing and corporate communications? Maybe by.
Can I get up for 1 second and grab this book? I'm going to grab this book.
You can.
It drives me nuts.
She's already running away, you guys. We scared her already.
It makes me crazy when the copy. Yes, it is a guide for book publishing and corporate communications, and it comes with a workbook where you can actually work through exercises and things, because, you know, copy editing is a skill and you have to hone it. Yep. And you have to sharpen it. And so I would work and the other thing too is that not everybody is suited to copy editing. Some people find that they dislike it greatly. If you work through that book and you find out that you're bored and you hate it, then perhaps you shouldn't try to be a copy editor. It's not for everyone. But if you're interested, those would be good places to start, I think.
Yeah. And also something you said right in the beginning was, you know, you join ACES and you join places because community matters, in publishing especially. Knowing people, recommendations, word of mouth. New Shelves gets probably 90% of our clientele, and the people we work with come from recommendations. And so same thing happens with Ericka. If I have a client who needs an editor and I'm like, oh, I think Ericka would like this, then I'm connecting them. And that's how it works. So building up your community in the publishing industry is one of the best things you can do.
For one thing, you know, the writing life is a tough life, and so we need all the friends that we can get. And if you're doing this as a business, that's how, you know, I have a website, you know, and I do some minimal advertising and marketing activities to promote my business, but most of my work comes through word of mouth and colleagues and people that I've worked with before. And, you know, it is a community, which is why that golden rule part of my blog matters too, because people talk. That's why you want to be very nice. Not very nice, but you want to be professional and you want to treat other people well, because in this business particularly, you never know when you will run into them again. And so you don't want to burn any bridges in the publishing world. It's not a good idea. So,
and you can help it, try not to. And also,
yes, try not to.
It will, exactly. I think that's important anywhere, but especially in the publishing industry. It's actually smaller than you may imagine that it is.
Yes. It's you know, it's teensy when you come down to it, when you start to realize, oh, I know that person and they know that person. Oh. But that's good though, because it's protective in some ways. Yeah. You know, if you run across somebody who's offering services and you're not sure whether they're on the up and up or not, you can go out to those networks in that community that you have and say, hey, you know, I got an offer from this person, or this person's doing this and they're asking if they want to do this and this and that. Yeah. Are they on the up and up? You can suss that out pretty quickly, you know, because unfortunately there are some bad actors in this business who, you know, take a pile of money from you and offer all kinds of things and then don't deliver. And I've worked with authors who've had that happen to them, unfortunately. So, you know, you never want that. It's the more you know, the better off you are.
Exactly. The more we all know, the better off we all are.
Yeah.
You Free Advice Fridays for some of that exact reason. So I love that. I'm going to jump back over here to our questions. We have a question about if someone is looking for an editor, where's the best place to start? I know that you are a big fan of the EFA.
Right. I recommend people either look at the EFA. ACES, again, is a good place to look. You can find editors on Upwork. And also Readsy is another place. And Readsy I recommend because they actually kind of make you prove who you are they verify your profile. So if you say you edited a bunch of books, you know, they check you out. There's a certain level of vetting there, you know. And yes, SCBWI for children's illustrators and writers and different, that's the children's books one that I always forget, and I always forget the order of the letters. SCBWI. But yeah, those are the big ones. And if you're going to start from zero, that's where I would start. You know, you can Google editing services and you might find my website. But if you want something, you know, that's a little more vetted and you feel a little bit safer about, then I would go to those kind of bigger overarching groups to start.
And also go to your community, go to the Free Advice Friday group on Facebook and ask. Go, you know, if you've got a local writers group or something like that, ask other people who they've used, because sometimes they have recommendations of who to go to. And sometimes they'll say, well, I use this person, but I might steer clear of them. So it's really great to, again, tap into your community for that, because it helps even on Readsy. And yes, they do verify and things like that, and it helps in that regard, but sometimes knowing someone who's used that editor or asking someone you trust is awesome.
Well, and you know, the editor-writer relationship is exactly that. It's a relationship. And you could, you know, see somebody online and they have, you know, fantastic credentials, and you think, oh, I really want to work with this person, and you do your first phone call with them and you realize that your communication styles are too different and you're never going to be able to collaborate. You know, it's an important relationship. You need to be able to communicate well, back and forth. And you need to, you know, to get along well too, because, you know, it's, you're handing over your baby to someone, and, you know, your book is your baby. And so you want to be able to completely trust your editor and know that they respect you and respect your work, and that they've worked on books that are like yours before. You know, if you are in historical fiction, you want somebody who's in that world. If you are in sci-fi, you want somebody who's, you know, well-versed in that world. And you want to make sure that, you know, you do an initial consultation with them and make sure that you're going to have a good working relationship, because it's a very close working relationship.
Yeah.
And you don't want to continually be butting heads with the person who's taking care of your baby.
Exactly.
You know, so there's more than just credentials. You know, who the editor is as a person and an editor is important too, and who you are as an author is important.
Well, exactly. I mean, and like you said, communication styles, because I have even seen edits where the editor made notes that were very cut and dried. I mean, just no fluff, cut and dried. And I read them and I was like, they're good notes. The author was so upset because they weren't fluffy. That's how they like to communicate. They like a lot of fluff, and you know, great. And the editor was just kind of, it wasn't a bad edit. It was
just the style of the delivery. See, my delivery method is, I like to, it's particularly if I have to give some hard feedback. You know, I know I'm a writer myself. So I know that when I turn something in and it hasn't quite made the mark, I know what's better for me to hear and what's more painful for me to hear. And so I try to, you know, if I have to tell you something's really not working, I try to tell you at least one thing nearby that is. Right. You know, this is a great sentence, because that's the other thing too. And I feel like authors need to hear that too. They need to hear not just what's not working in their manuscript, but they also need to hear what they do really well. You know, some people do dialogue really, really well, and their character development isn't. Some people, you know, develop vivid characters, but their dialogue is just dry as a bone. Like you want to, you know, tell them what they're doing right, you know, and so they can focus on fixing what they're not so great at quite yet.
It's the,
you know, and it just makes it a little easier to take, I think, you know. But but it's not, I don't sugarcoat it. You know, if a part of a manuscript is not working, I'm going to tell you this is not working. You know, or if there's something in there that it's just not going to fly, I'm like, no, this is not going to fly. Yeah. You know, my job is to help you make your book the best version of it that it can be. And my job is to help you find your voice as a writer, not impose my voice on your work. You know, I work behind the scenes. I'm best when I'm invisible. I'm like the Wizard of Oz. I'm just like, don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. That's how I feel like I function best. It's not, you know, I've had authors that I've had to have hard conversations with that haven't agreed with me when I've said, you know, I really want better for this character, and I think readers are going to want better for him too. And it's just, you know, well, I think it's fine the way it is. Well, okay, that's your prerogative. But if you pay me a fee for my professional opinion, you are going to get it. Good, bad, ugly, whatever in between. You know, I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, and I'm not going to obfuscate what I see. If I see it, I'm going to tell you. And you can decide what you want to do with it from there. And I'll give you help too. If you don't know how to fix an issue in a manuscript, I can give you 2 or 3 ideas. Like, well, maybe you could take it this way, or maybe you could do that, or maybe you could do that. But I'm not going to tell you, write this. That's your job. You're the writer. It's not my voice. It's not my story. It's yours. Yeah, I'm just here to help you. I'm a story Sherpa.
And that's going down
a novel doula
for you.
You know?
All right, we've got a question here. How do editors self-regulate themselves? Do they reach out to other editors for feedback? Is there ever like, I'm not sure if this is great feedback, and you go to someone else for that? Like another editor for a second look?
Yeah, you know, I have done that in the past where something in a manuscript has really been tricky to me. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, am I reading into this? Am I seeing what another person would see here? But I don't do a lot of that because, quite frankly, I don't need to. I don't need someone to second edit my work. I've been doing this for 22 years. And so I don't need someone else to look at it that much, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I trust my instincts and my knowledge and my experience. You know, but sometimes, you know, like when I was at WD, Cassie, the managing editor there, and I would both look at articles. And, you know, most of the times we would see the same things in a piece, like, you know, your voice is falling down here, we need more detail there, or whatever. But every once in a while, she would see something that I hadn't considered, and vice versa. Every once in a while, I would see something that she hadn't considered. And so we'd meet in the middle. But, you know, most editors, I think, are kind of lone wolfish.
They are.
I know.
I agree. And also keep in mind that when an editor is working on a book, they're not the only one looking at that. You know, generally authors will have beta readers. They will have not just a developmental edit, but a copy edit, a proofread. There are different people, and typically it's not recommended that you have the same person do each of those steps. It's all different. So you're getting different eyes on it throughout the course of the writing.
I should never be the first person that sees your manuscript. Before you send it to a developmental editor, you should be getting beta reads, because the casual reader that a beta reader is meant to be is going to pick up on a lot of things before you even bring it to me. Mm-hmm. And if you get that feedback from a beta reader, yeah, you know, wow, I just don't like this. And they may not even be able to articulate why, but they can kind of give you those caution flags in your manuscript so that you can go back and revise before you bring it to someone like me. Yep. And then when you get it to someone like me, if there's something in there that's like, it's not working, I actually have the language and the skill to articulate exactly what's not working and exactly why it's not working and exactly how you might be able to fix it. Whereas the casual reader may not. You know, when people ask me for design advice, it's the same thing. I tell people I'm not a designer. I don't know the lingo. I can't articulate why I don't like this cover. I can just tell you that I don't, you know, or why I love it. I'm like, that's why you hire a designer. You know, my bailiwick is content. And I stay in that lane. Yeah. And you definitely need multiple eyes on a manuscript. You cannot expect one person to catch everything in a book. It's just not humanly possible. And you don't want someone proofreading it who also developmental edited, because I've explained this before, but evolutionarily, our brains do us a giant favor every day. They only show us pertinent, relevant information. They only show us things that help us keep from being eaten by something larger than us. The second "the" in a sentence does not keep us from being eaten by something larger than us. So our brain glazes over it. We don't see it. It's extraneous information. it conserves energy so that we can watch more Netflix. So the proofreader's brain is actually trained to go against that evolution and against that fill in the gaps part of your brain, to actually see that second "the" in the sentence.
And it does take training.
It does. It takes training. My first jobs out of college were proofreading jobs, and it was a training ground, and it was tough. I worked in a department where we had a goal of 100% error-free art, and you had to sign your name to every piece that you proofread, and if they found a missing comma in there later, it was your keister. So that was how I trained as a proofreader, and I still proofread, and I do that intentionally. I don't proofread books that I've worked on as a copy editor or development editor. I proofread things that I've never seen before, because it's a skill set, and it's a sharpening thing, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So I still take on proofreading work just so that I keep those skills sharp, and I keep my brain trained. It makes me a better editor, I think. They work together. And I consider myself a really good editor and also a really good proofreader, but that's because I work to maintain those skills. Right. And they're two separate things.
Yeah, it's a muscle. You've got to flex.
It is, absolutely.
We've got a question here about tips for communicating with an editor. So are there any tips or like protocols to follow when you are trying to respond to feedback from an editor? If you're looking for more, if you need ideas, or if you just need a break, is there like tips about how to effectively communicate these types of things with your editor in a professional way?
Right. Well, I think that, honesty is where this all begins and ends. You have to be honest. If you're having trouble understanding what your editor means, say that. Yep. If it is too much for you to absorb, and I even do this, when I send an author back a ton of notes on a manuscript, and particularly when I can sense that they felt like this thing was ready to go, and I'm, giving them back, a lot of notes, I always put, at the bottom of that email, I know this is a lot to absorb. Please take your time with it. Yep. Don't let your initial gut reaction be your response to these edits. Read through them, take some time, take some space, do some breathing. Think about it, ruminate on it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, a good editor will be able to understand how you feel in those situations and will be able to help you through it. Mm-hmm. Don't feel like you can't tell me how you feel about your edits. I want to know how you feel about your edits. I want to know, when I get the book from you, what you think is working in it and what isn't. And it's really weird. Every time I have an author who says to me, there's this thing on page whatever, or there's this subplot whatever, or this character over here whatever, and I don't know. It's bugging me. And 9 times out of 10 they're right. That instinct is right. That thing is not working, and here's why it's not working. Right. But here's how you might be able to make it work. And I think this is the other thing too to remember about feedback on your work. It is not personal. Yes. That our work feels very personal because it is very, you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into your work. You call the book your baby. No one wants to hear that their baby's ugly. It's like no one wants to hear that, But
until after the fact, then you look back and go, no.
Yeah, could have used a hat. But it's like, it's not a criticism of you as a human being. Yeah. Criticism of your work is not criticism of you. And so don't go to the personal place with it. Be able to have some remove. And I know that's difficult. And I know it because I'm a writer myself. I've turned articles in and I've had an editor kick it back to me and say, this is garbage. And I'm just like, what? It hurts. But, that's why, especially on big development edit jobs, I tell my authors sometimes, I don't want to hear from you for at least a week. Mm-hmm. I know you're going to have the impulse, to clap back like we all do on the internet now, but don't. Sit with it for a minute and really consider it. Because I interviewed Tupelo Hassman, who's one of my favorite writers of all time, and I feel like she's way too underknown. And she talked about how freaking out was part of her writing process.
Yep.
Like, the freak out is part of the process, but just let it be. Like, whatever your process is, just let it be. You know, she would get notes from her editor and she would have a panic attack and freak out. You know, it's like, just let it be, sit with it. And then once you've calmed down and your adrenaline's gone back down and everything, you can kind of more cogently go through things. And yeah, okay. Almost every author who I've sent major notes back to has argued with me about it at first and kicked and screamed. And then a month or 2 months or 3 months later said, yeah, you know, you were right. And now the manuscript's better. Like, it, you know, it's like,
to that place. One, I work with a lot of authors who get edited. Some have gone to, you know, to Ericka, to other editors. And usually what I say is read through the notes, leave it for 2 days. Don't make a change. Don't respond, leave it. And then come back and read it again. Now that you can kind of know what's coming, come back and look at it again. And if you still feel like it's a problem, then and sometimes it helps to have ideas bounce back. I've had people go to Ericka for an edit. She gives them hard feedback. They read it, are kind of, you know, like thrown. And then I was like, all right, go take a couple of days, send me the manuscript, let me look at the notes too. And then let's just bounce it back and forth. Sometimes having someone else read those notes, because like you said, it was separating the personal. This is not a personal attack. This was feedback on a story.
Yeah. You know, this is a tricky business, and being a writer is a challenging enterprise. You know, but that's what I mean when I talk about relationship. You know, you need to fundamentally trust your editor, and you know, and trust that spidey sense. If you don't feel like you're going to get along with them, you know, you probably shouldn't work with them, because this is a very collaborative process, and you know, you're going to hear things you don't necessarily want to hear, and it's a lot easier to take that from somebody who you respect and trust, you know, than someone you don't.
Well, and also keep in mind that you're paying someone to give you their opinion and feedback, which means you have to be receptive to it. You cannot have the mindset of, I know best, it's mine. Then why pay for an editor?
Yeah, why pay for an editor? Why come to me? If you're not gonna, you know, take any feedback, then you don't need me. You know, just bye.
Oh my goodness, I love it. All right, let's get to our next question here. I hired a freelancer to do some copy editing, and they did more of a developmental edit. While their comments were good, they really didn't do what I hired them for. I didn't have any problem paying them for their time because it was good work, yet I would have liked more communication so we are on the same page. Do you have any tips on laying out exactly what you want, and also how the communication goes if it's starting to veer towards something you don't feel like you agreed on? What do you think?
That, you know, that happens. I hired a proofreader once, and I didn't get a proofread. I got their editorial comments scrawled on pages and 12 missed typos. I was not happy. I hire a proofreader to catch the typos. You know, like there's each level of edit entails a specific thing. And I think that, you know, I'm always very clear with my clients up front, asking them, what do you want? You know, sometimes they don't know whether they just need a copy editor or they need a development editor, or maybe they just need something proofread. I work with them to figure out, I explain what all the levels of edit are, what each one contains. It's almost like a menu. You know, it's like, you know, for development edit, you get these things. For copy edit, you get these things. For proofreading, you get these things. And, you know, oh, copy editing sounds like what I want. Okay, great. Let's put that sandwich together. Here's what I'm going to look for. Here's what I'm going to do. Is that what you want? It's all about a clear conversation at the beginning. Now, once they have your manuscript and you think you've explained to them what you want and they take it off and they do something else, that's when you need to communicate that with them. That person needs to know that what they did was more developmental and less copy edit. They need to know that, because they may not. You know, people use terms in this business interchangeably. In that instance, I would say to that person, I appreciate your notes here. This is really, really helpful. But what I really needed was someone to catch all the series commas, and I think, you still pay them for their time. If they did good work, you still pay them for their time. But I think that's something that's a conversation that needs to be had. That person needs to know that they didn't actually do a copy edit. They did something else.
Well, and I
now, for me,
can also,
if I got a manuscript recently for copy edit, and I did copy edit it. But me being me, I noticed a couple of development issues and I flagged them. And I even said to my client, I know you hired me to do a copy edit, and I have done that. But I noticed these 3 things too. And I would be remiss if I didn't point them out to you. You can do with them whatever you want. But I still made sure that I did 152% of a copy edit too. I didn't, slack off on the copy editing side. A good editor will do that, But that's something that's why it's really important to be clear upfront exactly what you want and exactly what each of those terms means, and ask that editor what they mean when they say copy edit.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also important that when you are going, instead of just saying, I need a copy edit, have in mind your expectations as well. I need a copy edit, so I am looking for, and lay it out for them. And that way, let them respond. Maybe they'll say, my copy edit doesn't do that. My copy edit does this. Great.
Yeah.
But also,
and now you know.
Exactly. And then because there are some interchangeable terms. But for the record, Ericka, would you quickly just go through the different stages of, the proofread, the copy edit, developmental edit, just for everyone, so we're overall.
I've described it on your fantastic program before, and as a funnel. Yep. At the top of the funnel, you have development edit. This is the bird's eye view of your manuscript. Do all of these characters belong here? Are there gigantic holes in your plot? It does, or if it's nonfiction, if it's a memoir, say I work on a fair amount of memoir, what are there missing parts of this story? Are there things that a reader are going to wonder, like, why didn't you tell us about this? Or maybe you went into too much detail over here on something and you're grossing me out, dude. Like, dial it back. It's the big high level issue. Then you kind of funnel down to line edit, which is where you're just literally going through manuscript line by line and you're polishing language. Does this sentence have as much punch as it could have? Have you chosen the right adjectives, adverbs, that sort of thing. Copy edit is the funnel's getting narrower. By the time a manuscript gets to copy edit, it's pretty much in place. This is pretty much the plot we're going to have. These are pretty much the characters we're going to have. If it's a memoir, these are pretty much the episodes we're going to talk about in this memoir. It's pretty much complete. And then you're just polishing it up.
Yep.
Commas, grammar, spelling, proper names. Are they all spelled correctly? Is everybody, if you spelled it J-I-M over here, it better not be J-Y-M over here. Like consistency of terms, punctuation, all those little fine-tuning things. Then it goes to a designer and it gets laid out. Then you have a proofreader look at it, because a proofreader isn't looking for those overarching content issues. Those should have been fixed at DE or line edit. A proofreader is looking for typos, design, layout flaws, missing headers and footers, page margins, everything like that. The proofreader is not just looking at the text. I think that's the thing that hangs people up on the difference between copy editing and proofreading particularly. Proofreading is not just a read of your text, it's also a check of your design.
Yep.
Proofreading is not just reading the words again, because I hear a lot of people say, well, I had it copy edited, why do I need it proofread? Because proofreading is at a different part of the process, and a proofreader checks for layout and design issues as well as text issues.
Yep.
It's not just the text at that point.
And that's typically,
I think that's where a lot of confusion is.
Like laid out. Many proofreaders I know will actually ask for a printed book because they're looking for like actual print flaws or design flaws, as well as, any last minute catches.
I love to proofread on paper, and I'll tell you this, I'm faster on paper than I am on screen. We read differently in print than we do on screens.
Yep.
And I had a client that, until COVID, sent me paper proofs, and I loved it. I can get through a paper proof like lightning speed. You just see it differently when it's on the page than on the screen. It's a different type of reading. Now I can proofread on screen too, and I do. I'm a little bit slower proofreading on screen. It's that whole evolutionary, we look at stuff online all day, and so we fill in information, and so you still have to, break out of that and focus. Is every header and footer here, in a PDF? And you can have it proofed both ways, but I still love paper proofing.
I still love my red pen. The red pen
I know.
on the book, it still makes me too happy.
I use red pencil, so that if I decide I think I'm going to leave that, I just, scribble it out. But yeah, I miss my red pencil. I really do.
I'm just going to send you something just so you can proofread it with red pencil for me.
Great. It's so great. And I finally got a printer set up at the house. So every once in a while, if I'm working on a smaller project, I will actually still print it out.
Yeah.
And look at it on paper. You just see more.
Yeah, it's true. Can a writer use the agencies freely in their novels, such as FBI, NSA, CIA? Are we allowed to use those?
Yeah, they're not trademarked. No. The only thing, if something is a writer, you can use brand names in your manuscripts too, as long as they're presented consistently and spelled correctly, et cetera, et cetera. But I had a writing teacher say, never use brand names because you're being lazy on the work of description. And she wouldn't let us put a brand name in a paragraph. So there's your writing tip for the day. But if you want to, write about, if you're writing, a political thriller or whatever, yeah, you could put the NSA, the CIA in there. They're not trademark terms.
No, they're not.
You only run into problems with trademarks and other people's copyrighted material. That's when you run into problems.
Right. Yeah, you have to be careful about song lyrics and
oh, yes. Yep. Yes, very careful.
Let me see. What are the ways that you recommend a new book author would vet an editor or copy editor in terms of the writer's manuscript category? Not all editors should edit all manuscripts based on, so what leading questions or what process can people go through to make sure that they're matching up with an editor? A children's book editor needs vastly different skills than a business book editor, and what kind of questions to ask to get there?
I don't work on every type of book. I can't work on every type of book. Most professional editors will tell you on their websites or their Readsy pages or their EFA profiles, like I work on historical fiction, or I work on nonfiction exclusively, or I work on academic books. I'm a children's book editor. Like most people will tell you how they specialize because they don't want to get their time wasted getting queries for books that they don't work on. If they haven't done that though, then ask them, hey, what books have you worked on? If you say you're a historical fiction editor, I would like to, give me the Amazon links to some books that you've worked on. Yep. It's perfectly reasonable to ask an editor, can you show me examples of books that you've worked on? And you can see right away, like, is this, what is this book? The other thing too, is that, it gets tricky because, you can say, I edited a book, and a lot of times your name doesn't go in the book. I mean, you're trusting people. I don't know what to tell you to do with someone who's dishonest. I know that I'm honest to a fault almost myself. And most people in this business are, because again, nobody's going into freelance editing to be a millionaire. There's no grift here. It's not, it's like we do this work because we love it. And yeah, we do want to pay our bills, but it's not a con job. Like, it's just not. And as far as like, whether, and I see this question here in the chat, how do you vet an editor for political views, feminism, so you don't waste their time if they are not simpatico? I hope you're not anti-feminist, sir. But like you do, most editors are very online these days. Anybody can look at my Twitter feed at any point in time and know where I stand on, 9/10 of issues. Like I don't hide anything. I don't obfuscate anything. Most people are, like I said, check their social media profiles. You'll see right away if you find someone's Facebook, whether, there's somebody who's kind of out there and you may not want to be involved with them or not. I mean, I'll tell you, if I have a new author come to me, I check out their social media. it goes both ways. You know, I don't want to work with somebody who is going to be diametrically opposed to, you know, principles that I hold dear as a human. So, you know, it's, again, it's a relationship. You should vet an editor the way that you would vet any professional service provider. You know, Google them.
Well, and I think also it's important to know, I mean, maybe some people don't put things out there. Some people
don't.
Like politics, I want a 10-foot pole between me and them. I have lots of friends and family on either way. And I'm like, I will hold my views. I will cast my vote and no one will ever. My husband did not. He was like, well, and I'm like, none of your business. Not because
it's not.
He could make some very educated guesses, but the truth is that if you have something that you feel definitely leans one way or the other, ask. It's not offensive to say, look, my book very much leans towards this or this. Is this an issue for you? Because honestly, if someone comes to me and says that, if someone comes to me and says, this is what my book is all about, is that an issue for you? If it is, it's not going to be a good relationship. And then I'll say, you know, it's probably not the best project for me, but good luck. And
that's why I asked to see 5 to 10 pages. Anybody who comes to me and wants to be a client, you know, I say, hey, can I see the first 5 to 10 pages of your manuscript? Mm-hmm. And, you know, and you can tell within a few pages whether this is a person whose style you're going to appreciate, whether the subject matter is going to be something that you're going to want to work with or not. I try to keep my politics out of my editing, but I can't let, you know, if something comes across my desk that is overtly racist, sexist, hateful in any way, I'm not going to not say something about that. Like that's, you know, I'm just not.
Right. Well, and I think that, I mean, that goes for anything. And so I do think if it's something so pointed that you think it may be an issue, just ask. No one wants to work on a project where they're going to butt heads with you. Not anyone who should actually be editing anyway, because it's not going to make for, people want to like their jobs. 80% of people do not like their jobs, but people want to like their jobs. And I will say that especially freelancers, people who are choosing to do what they do, we want to like our jobs. We want to work with people that we are symbiotic with.
Absolutely. Yeah. This doesn't need to be an adversarial relationship. It always pains me when I come across an author who clearly has had a negative experience with an editor.
Yep.
And I just hate that because there's no reason for it. It's not necessary, you know. But then, you know, you have to understand too that some people just don't really want to ever be edited. And I've run across those folks too, you know. So consider the source. But again, that's where that initial conversation with somebody that you're considering working with is so critical. You know, it's an interview and it goes both ways, you know. It has to work for both of you.
Amen. David has a really great question about how language has evolved over the years. So when you're writing a historical novel, how do you blend the historical feeling and language with modern readers? And should you only write strictly as it would have been in the 1900s, or how?
You know, I always tell my historical fiction authors, yes, you are writing historical fiction, but you also have to keep in mind the entire time that you're writing this book, that you're writing it for a contemporary audience. Mm-hmm. Don't get them lost. Keep them on the page. If there is a particularly, you know, archaic expression that you want to use in your book, my thing is, I never want to take a reader out of a story.
Yeah.
And so if you're wielding the language, you know, in a way that they're going to have to go and look up a bunch of different stuff on a page, you're losing them. You're dropping them out of the story.
Yeah.
You can weave in some of that stuff for flavor, you know, and you can't be anachronistic either. Like you can't talk about something that didn't exist in that time period. It's not a time travel book. It's not Back to the Future Part 6. But don't lose your readers. You know, yes, something might have been okay in 1892, but you're writing it in 2021. So you don't want to be off-putting to a contemporary reader. And that's a balance that you have to strike. And a good writer will help you strike that. A good editor will help you strike that balance too. Don't make people go off your page. Don't make them feel like they have to look something up every other page. You want to learn something from the books that you read, and so you can pepper something like that in. But if I can't understand it sitting here in 2021, it's not effective storytelling.
Well, it's the same thing. I was just talking to our friend Shira about writing medical scenes. And the same thing is true, is that you want to pepper in the flavor. But if you're using all these terms that I'm like, hang on, let me just go find out what a CDFA TGI is. You've not only is now this a research project when I just wanted to read a story, but as you said, Ericka, you've taken them out of the story. No one wants that.
No. I tell my authors the same thing when they give people character names that are other recognizable human beings. We had a Jon Stewart in one of Chris, and I was like, Jon Stewart, the comedian? And he was like, I didn't even think about that. But don't use a familiar name. Like somebody called a character after, I can't remember. It's like, because you never know what your reader associates with that. Yeah. And again, that's one of the ways that you can lose them and drop them out of the story. Now I'm thinking about The Daily Show. Now I'm thinking about something completely different than what you wanted me on your page thinking about.
Right.
Don't give your reader any reason to leave your page.
Yeah. You know? That's good. That's good. And keep in mind that once a reader goes off of your book and has to go look something up, they may not come back. I mean, that's a really good way to lose, because I'm reading my paperback book about historical fiction, and then I see the word, my kids actually asked me, Fortnite. What's a Fortnite, Mom? Is it a video game? And I'm like, no. But then, so what happens? So then I pick up my phone and I'm like, all right, well, let me research what this is. Then I'm on Facebook, and then I'm on Free Advice Friday, and then an hour's gone by. Happens.
You're down the rabbit hole and you're gone, and you've lost your reader's buy-in. Again, it's like anything. It's just like in cooking. I love to cook, I don't dump an entire jar of pepper in, I give it a sprinkle, It's the same way with those sorts of details. Give it a sprinkle for authenticity, but don't beat your reader about the head and shoulders with it.
Right.
Please.
Love it. All right. We have a couple questions to close up. We're almost at 11, but a couple of questions for people who are working with traditional publishers. So maybe the big five, or who are not self-publishing, they're working with traditional publishers. And one of the questions here is that how do you order for a nonfiction book? This person's writing a book that involves their story, but then it also has interviews, and then it's got an explanation of a problem. It's about addiction. So it's got their story, it's got coping strategies and interviews, and then it goes into an explanation of the drug epidemic and how people get caught up in it. And this person is wondering, does it matter how you order the story? And if so, how do you order the story when you've got kind of different parts for nonfiction?
Oh, okay. I've worked on a fair amount of nonfiction, spirituality, self-help type books. And I always find, and this is just a principle that I have used, I'm not saying that I am the great belted earl and this is the way you have to do it. But I think that when you're working on a nonfiction topic and you're weaving in personal story with exposition, I like a mix of that. I like to open a chapter with a personal story. If it's someone that you've interviewed, Chris's story, Marge's story, my story, and then go into an exposition of, the topic where it's not a personal story, but it's actually an explanation of these different things, and weave them in chapter by chapter like that.
Right.
I don't like to break things out in separate chunks. Personal stories are engaging, particularly with nonfiction topics. Yeah. Because sometimes those can be dry or challenging. So if you start with a personal story, everybody wants to hear stories. That's, it's prehistoric. We love story. So draw us in with the personal and then give us the professional exposition on that.
I agree.
That's how I do those things.
And I think that's great. And I will also say, if you've already written this and it is in 3 parts, go back with a eye looking at how you can weave in the different parts. Because if you have, let's say you've got your story and then you've got all these coping strategies, and then you talk about the problem and how we got to that problem, well, like we've kind of already passed that. We've gone to the solution, and then you're trying to show me the story, you know, the problem. You've got to start weaving in that problem earlier on. So your story should come with some explanation of the problem. Make sure, I mean, what came first, the chicken or the egg? But you don't usually look for a solution until you have identified a problem. So don't put the problem at the end. And do you ever work with writers who are trying to polish a manuscript to pitch it to an agent or to a publisher?
Yes, I'm actually working with a lovely woman right now who's doing that exact thing. She went to our Writer's Digest virtual conference this year and went to the pitch slam and had 6 agents interested in her work, and one wanted 5 pages and one wanted 10 pages and one wanted 50 pages. And, you know, she sent me her manuscript and said, what now? I have all this agent interest. And basically, I've just helped her clean up that first 5, 10, 20, 50 pages, really, really make them shine so that when she sends them back to these agents, you know, they have the best versions of those pages. I work with self-published authors who I'm going to be their editor and they're going to publish this book. And I also do the same service basically for people who want to pitch to agents and publishers. You know, you want to send out the best product that you can. And so it's always a good idea to have that looked at by someone before you do, because, you know, someone like me can tell you, yeah, this is really dragging. You're going to lose an agent. Those first 5 or 10 pages, you got to nail them. You got to stick that landing. You know, it's critical. And I help tons of authors do just that. You know, like, let's get this opening perfect. You know, let's nail it.
And that's usually how it works, you guys. When you're pitching an agent, they're looking at the first couple pages. They like it, they'll ask for more. 5 to 10 pages is very common. And do you, when you work with people who are pitching agents or publishers, do they usually mention in their pitch that they have worked with an editor, or no? Or do you know?
You know, I don't think most of them, the pitch should focus on you as the writer and the book. You know, now if an agent asks you if you've worked with an editor, you can tell them that, yeah, you know, I worked with an editor, sure. But the agent, I think, and this is probably a better question for our friend Amy Collins, but the agent wants to be drawn in by those first few pages, and they want to know that, you know, you have a compelling story. Some of that other stuff is just less consequential. And also, agents don't have a lot of time. So when you pitch them, your query letter needs to be, you know, again, you got to stick that landing. Yeah. You know, think elevator pitch. You know, you have seconds to impress and to inspire an interest in more. Don't waste words on anything.
On anything else. Well, it's kind of like if you were going to a model photo, you know, like a modeling gig, you show them your best headshot. You don't say, it took me 5 hours to look like this, and then I got my hair done. They want to think that you woke up flawless. And as the same, an agent wants to, they don't care how that you got there. They want to know this is what it is and this is what to expect from you. They don't care how you got there. I mean, unless someone else wrote it for you, in which case it's a little bit different.
Yeah. No, editors are invisible and we're fine. I'm fine. I don't, I'm fine.
Love it that way. All right. Well, it's 11 o'clock. I know that there were some questions more about agents and about marketing your book. So you guys come back next week, next Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, and we will be back on Free Advice Friday answering questions about book marketing. I saw some questions about, you know, barcodes and pricing and all sorts of things. So come back next week. We'll cover them then. If you want to send your questions in advance, send them to questions@freeadvicefridays.com and we will answer them online. And this video will go up on a replay on YouTube on Monday. So youtube.com/newshelvesbooks. You can find it there. And Ericka, thank you again for joining us. You are the best. You guys, if you still have questions for Ericka and you would like to, get in touch with her, Free Advice Fridays Facebook group. She hangs out in there, and if you tag her, I know that she'll say hi to you. She's a friendly person. I don't know if you got that at all.
Yes.
Ericka,
and you can always visit my website and shoot me an email if we didn't get to your question today. I'm happy to help. It's my whole raison d'etre.
and your website is?
www.erickamcintyre.com. But yes, the Free Advice Fridays Facebook, if you can't figure out how to spell my name, I know it's commonly misspelled, just go there. You'll find me.
We'll do a post. I'll start a post that says all things Ericka. So go find us there. And you guys, thanks for joining us. We will see you next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern.